Everything became clear by accident, as usually happens. I came home from work feeling sick and lay on the couch in the family room with my eyes closed. I just parked my car in the garage. It was a cold day, so I closed the garage door behind me. My wife didn't know I was home when she pulled up to the house because she had left her car outside the garage. She and her sister Carla entered through the front door and walked into the kitchen. The couch I was lying on had its back to the entrance to the family room. They couldn't see me. I was about to stand up and announce my presence, but when I raised my head, I felt so sick that I fell back onto the sofa until it passed. Meanwhile, I could barely hear their conversation in the kitchen. I realized that my wife had stopped by home on the way to take Carla to show her the new dress she had bought for their annual trip to Chicago. Once a year for the past 4 years, they have traveled together from our home in Indianapolis to the Windy City to attend a show and art exhibits. Carla's husband, Bob, and I stayed home and looked after the children while they were away. We figured they worked hard taking care of our preschoolers throughout the year, and we could afford them weekends without responsibilities. By the way, my wife's name is Janice, and my name is Jim. We have 2 children, Ryan 5 years old, and Sean 2 years old. Janice and I had been married for 7 years, and I was a middle manager at a large logistics company. We managed to live quite comfortably on my salary. My wife is a very attractive woman and tried to maintain her figure after 2 births. We had sex often and really enjoyed each other. I thought we had the perfect couple and the perfect marriage. Carla and Bob lived a few blocks away from us, and we spent most of our time together as families and as good friends. Carla was a little younger than my wife, and they were almost inseparable. They have a daughter, Melissa, 3 years old. As I continued to lie silently, waiting for my attack of nausea to pass, I heard Carla exclaim as she looked at the dress my wife was showing her. "Oh my God, what a sexy dress. Has Jim seen it? Does he know you're taking it on the trip?" "No, if he saw him, he might get suspicious, so don't say anything." "Okay, Randy will love it." Who the hell is Randy? I thought. My nausea passed, but I continued to lie there, waiting to hear more. "Are you going to get something small for Mark?" my wife asked. "Who the hell is Mark?" "I have some special lingerie that I kept secret from Bob that will definitely turn him on," Carla replied. "I also have some special underwear that Jim hasn't seen either. It's sure to get Randy going." My God, I thought. They must be cheating, and they seem to know these guys well. I was amazed and shocked by what I heard. Who are these guys, and how long and how often have they been dating? My head was already spinning from what I heard when they continued their conversation. "Are you going to take birth control pills again this year?" "Yes, I only wanted 1 child with Randy. I'm lucky that he and Jim are so similar. Even Jim's mom thinks Sean is the spitting image of Jim." My God, my God. I suddenly felt like I had been punched in the stomach, and now my nausea was hitting me like a hammer. I could barely contain my gag reflex. I wanted to vomit so much that bile came to my mouth. Luckily, they decided to leave at that point so Jen could take Carla home. I quickly got up from the couch and ran downstairs to the toilet as soon as they closed the front door. I barely made it to the toilet. The vomiting had already started when I stuck my head in the toilet and let it out. Thank God the lid was lifted. I think I threw up everything except my butt, and I was still dry gagging when I finished. It took me a second to realize that I needed proof of cheating, and I needed to get out of the house before Janice returned. I quickly sprayed air freshener in the bathroom, grabbed my jacket, and ran out to the garage, got into my car, opened the garage door, and sped down the street, slamming the gate behind me. I drove to the parking lot of a nearby shopping center and sat in the car, wondering what I should do. I thought about contacting my brother-in-law, Bob, and telling him what I had heard, but my mind was reeling from the idea that Janice might be unfaithful to me, and that Sean might not be my son. I felt sick, but my anger began to rise as I thought about her hooking up with some guy named Randy. What the hell am I going to tell Bob about Carl and Mark? I urgently needed legal advice to determine what my options were if this ended in divorce. The girls were supposed to leave on their trip in 4 days. I had a lot to do before this. Using my mobile phone, I called my friend, golf partner, schoolmate and personal lawyer Jerry Matthews and asked his secretary Helen so I could see him as soon as possible. Helen knew me and could tell by my voice that something was wrong and asked if I could be in their office in 15 minutes. I responded positively and quickly drove a few blocks. When I walked into Jerry's office, Helen looked at me and exclaimed, "Jim, you look terrible." "I just heard some bad news, Helen, and I think I'm getting sick. Is he available now?" "Yes, come in," she said, wringing her hands in worry as she looked at me. I walked past her, knocked once, and entered Jerry's private office. Jerry stood up as I entered and motioned for me to sit in the chair in front of his desk. "Oh my God, Jim, what happened? You look terrible." "Jerry, I've just been hit with a double misfortune. One I think I'll survive, but the other is doubtful at the moment." "Tell me about it," he said, sitting down. "First of all, I have to warn you that I might be getting sick, and secondly, I have a problem with Janice. I need some advice." "Okay, the first one shouldn't be a problem since I got the flu shot, and a problem with Janice is unthinkable. I've known you both since you got married, and I've never seen a more perfect couple. Tell me about it anyway." I told Jerry what I heard that day, and he said, "I can't believe Janice or Carla would do something like that. And if Janice intentionally got pregnant with another man, that's really amazing. What do you think? What do you want to do? Do you want a divorce, or do you think you can get over this with a child and her cheating?" At this point, I don't know how I could forgive her. "You know, I don't handle divorce cases, but I can put you in touch with a good divorce lawyer who can walk you through the process if that's what you want. You'll need proof of infidelity beyond what you've heard, and especially about Sean's paternity. Do you want me to call him and arrange a meeting?" "Please," I sobbed as I suddenly realized the enormity of what I was about to do. Jerry looked at me sadly when he called Helen. "Helen, call me Sam Ridley." "Oh God, no," Helen exclaimed, but Jerry quickly connected. "Sam, hi, this is Jerry. Do you have time to talk to my good friend about the problem he's having?" There was a pause while Jerry listened and then turned to me. "How about tomorrow morning at 9 in Sam's office? It's getting pretty late now." "Okay, I'll be there," I nodded. "I would advise you to go home now and try not to show Janice that something is wrong. It may not turn out to be what you think, and you could cause irreparable damage to your marriage." "You're right. I have to control myself until I'm sure. Thanks for your help, Jerry." We stood up, and he shook my hand with both of his. "I'm so sorry about this, Jim. You and Janice have always been dear friends of mine. We've known each other a long time. Your grief is my grief. Thank you again, Jerry. I'll be in touch and let you know what happens." Helen looked at me with tears in her eyes as I walked out. "I'm so sorry, Jim." "Thank you, Helen." When I returned home in the evening, it was at my usual time of arrival from work, so Janice did not notice anything unusual about my arrival, but immediately commented on my appearance. "Jim, honey, you look terrible. Are you feeling unwell?" I clenched my teeth. I wanted so badly to tell her, hurt her the same way I suffered at the thought of her possible infidelity. However, I replied, "I think I'm getting sick," and added with an angry but forced smile, "I hope I feel better by the weekend so you can still go on the trip." I saw that she was momentarily confused by this thought, but quickly came to her senses. "Oh, it's probably just a cold. You should be better by Friday." "I hope so. Right now, I just want to lie down, so can I save dinner for later?" "Of course, dear. Go change and go to bed. Why didn't you leave work earlier?" "I tried, but I had too much to do." I lied. "Take a couple of aspirins, and I'll come by in a while to check on you." I slowly walked up the stairs to our bedroom. I didn't want to go near the kids, so I left them playing in the family room. I especially couldn't look at Sean. Oh my God, what if he's not my son? What would I do? I remembered how before our last trip Jen wouldn't let us have sex the week before, and after the event because she claimed she had inflammation there. She deliberately had sex with him in order to conceive his child. It was very difficult to accept the scale of her betrayal. I only woke up the next morning feeling a little better and thought it was just a 24-hour flu. But the sudden memory of what I had heard the previous day left me depressed. I looked at Janice sleeping next to me, and she looked so peaceful and innocent that I felt it's hard to imagine her with another man. But I knew I had to be prepared for the possibility. I went to the bathroom, took a shower, and then got dressed for the next day of work. I drank a cup of coffee and left the house before Janice came downstairs. I heard her upstairs with the kids. They always managed to get up early, but I still couldn't meet them face to face. I had breakfast at Dennis's and then got to work early and tried to concentrate on work for a while. Around 8:30, I walked in and told my boss that I would have a couple hours of personal time this morning, and he simply nodded in response and then asked, "How are you feeling this morning? You didn't look too good when you left here early yesterday." "I'll be fine, Jack. It may take some time to get over it." He talked about my illness, but I was thinking about Janice. At 9, I was at Sam's door, and his secretary showed me into his office and closed the door as she left. Sam had an informal group of soft chairs around a low table, and as we greeted each other, he motioned me over to one of the chairs and seated the other one across from me. "In this business," he said, "I find it more conducive to relaxing my clients because divorce is a very emotional issue and requires a lot of personal involvement. If you're interested, I have decaf. So why don't you tell me about it and we'll move on." I poured myself a cup of coffee and began my story. When I finished, he thought for a moment and asked, "Do you love your wife?" I thought I loved her more than life itself, but when I think about what she could do to me, I feel cold and empty inside and I get angry. It's like she's someone I don't know anymore, a stranger. I continue to hope so. It's a bad dream, and I'll wake up and everything will be fine. Also, I have to take the kids into account in all of this. They worry me the most. Well, I think we need to find out for sure that she is committing adultery, and then, if what you heard is true, you can decide whether to go ahead with the divorce. We will need to hire an investigator to check your wife's background. Making it in Chicago this weekend. It can be a little expensive, so I would suggest getting your brother-in-law to help split the cost. Looks like if this is true, we can kill two birds with one stone. Then I don't think it will be necessary for you to conduct DNA tests to confirm the paternity of your children. I would advise your brother-in-law to do the same, but you can talk to him about it when you see him. We need to schedule another meeting with him. I don't want to get Bob involved until our wives are away on a trip. Right now, I'm having a hard time interacting with Janice the way I usually do. I can blame my unusual behavior on the flu, but if I tell Bob and he starts acting strangely towards Carla, they might get suspicious. Okay, that makes sense. Now, can you give me your wife's itinerary so I can give it to the detective? It would be useful for me to know the name of the hotel and the room number if she has a special one reserved. I think they book the same room every year, so I'll give you that information along with whatever itinerary they have. I'm guessing they're flying or driving. They fly and use taxis or shuttle buses when they get there. Okay, this makes it easier to spy on them. Then you'll need to protect your finances. Do you know what I mean? I think I have an idea. You must protect your assets. We must assume that what you heard is true. So wherever your wife has access to joint accounts, credit cards, etc., consider changing the beneficiaries on your insurance policies on your children. It happens that when a spouse finds out about the impending breakup, he can run away and empty all the accounts. You can always return everything as it was, if there are no problems. You can be as generous as you want in your joint account. She could exist until she finds a job and/or a new place to live. I'll leave it up to you. when you talk to your brother-in-law, you can also warn him about this. When we discuss the terms of the divorce, we can go ahead with dividing both of yours assets. I'll start with ours today. That's it. I hope this all turns out to be a false alarm for you. But if what you heard turns out to be true, you should be able to get custody of your eldest son without any problems. Okay, thanks, Sam. I'll get you that route by tomorrow. After I left Sam's office, I went straight to the bank and closed all of our joint savings accounts and certificates of deposit, transferring the funds into the account in my name only. I left $1 in our joint checking account and transferred the rest of the money into my savings account. I then contacted my securities broker and transferred our funds into my own account. He was a little concerned about what this meant, but I didn't bother asking him. I wanted to cancel our credit cards, but I was afraid that if the charge was declined while they were in Chicago, it might alert them, so I decided to wait until I got the information from the detective. Then I went back to the office and tried to focus on work for the rest of the day. I couldn't eat lunch. I didn't know if it was the remnants of the flu or the thoughts of my wife. Images of her having sex with another man flashed through my mind, and my anger and stress levels grew. I knew I had to control myself. When I returned home in the evening, I pretended to continue to be sick. Janice seemed worried. "Why didn't you stay home today? You shouldn't have gone to work in the first place." "I didn't want to get you and the kids sick. If you were sick, you wouldn't be able to go on the weekend with Carla." I waited for her reaction. "Maybe you're right. Maybe you should sleep in the guest room tonight or until you feel better." The bitch was making sure her weekend with her lover wouldn't be disrupted. I thought, it will be very difficult not to let her know that I suspect something over the next few days. I was able to eat some dinner, and instead of going to watch TV afterward, I went to the computer to check my email. While I was there, I decided to check what emails she was receiving on her account and discovered that she had changed her password. I did some digging and discovered that the new password was Sean's name and his date of birth. When I opened it, I found a gold mine, a series of emails from someone with the username Randy, and I copied them into a new file to print later. I read a few to confirm what I was hoping not to find: evidence of her betrayal. It looks like they had to communicate to organize this day off. They may also have been using the phone while I was at work. Most of their plans had already been made before, so I didn't expect to learn much new if I started tapping the phone line now. The emails should have provided a sufficient written record of their plans. Now all I could do was wait. The next day I faxed Sam a copy of the itinerary and tried to continue as normal, but it was very difficult. My boss and secretary knew something was wrong, but they didn't say much except to ask if I was still sick. I just told them it was hard to get rid of me and continued working. After reading them, I printed out Janice's emails from random and sent copies to Sam. I now knew that they had been meeting on this annual outing for 4 years, with Randy and Mark checking into one room and Janice and Carla in the next room. This way, each of the lovers could live in the same room and be close. They booked the same rooms every year, so I passed on the room information to Sam as he requested. I also learned that Randy and Mark are married and live in Milwaukee. They attended the annual Chicago Boat Show at the same time each year, leaving their wives at home to look after the children. Finally, Friday arrived. Janice and Carla will drive to the airport around noon in Carla's car and leave it there until they return on Sunday. I got up and went down to the kitchen. Janice made coffee and prepared a breakfast of eggs and bacon. I usually only ate cereal, so I thought there must be something special this morning. Anyway, I want to have a good breakfast before I go. I am worrying about you. You haven't eaten well all week. The flu must have taken a very strong hold. I'm sorry we weren't close this week, and I thank you for trying to protect me and the kids. I really appreciate it. When I return on Sunday, you will feel better, and then I will express my gratitude. Thank you, Ian. I'm looking forward to it. And kissed her chastely on the cheek. She looked pleased. Remember to be home by noon today because you will have to start your babysitting duties so we can get to the airport. No, I haven't forgotten. I growled back, momentarily forgetting the need to remain in control. But the pressure of my thoughts about what she planned to do this weekend got to me. What's the matter, Jim? Are you mad at me for some reason? No, no. I just cleared my throat. It must have been phlegm. I responded, smiling in what I hoped was an innocent response. She looked at me strangely for a minute, but I kept my expression relaxed and attentive as she resumed her chatter. After breakfast, I put on my jacket, took my briefcase, and headed to the garage. "Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye before you go?" she asked, looking at me strangely again. I decided that I needed to do everything possible, otherwise she would suspect something, so I turned around, threw my briefcase, picked her up, and kissed her on the lips. My stomach felt sick, but I suppressed it, trying to convince her of my undying love and loyalty. It must have worked because when I walked away she said, "Wow, honey, maybe you should stay home this morning and we can have Sunday sex today." "I'd like to, honey, but if I'm going to take half a day off, I have to go to work." I kissed her on the cheek again, grabbed my briefcase again, and went to the garage. She was all smiles when I left, so I hoped she wasn't suspicious anymore. If she wanted to act like a loving wife, I could have acted like a loving husband a little longer. By noon, I returned from work and Ian had prepared lunch for me. I ate and chatted with her while she collected her bags at the door. "Well, I hope you girls behave yourself," I told her as cheerfully as I could. "We always do cute things, but there are always some cute hunks to look at." She joked in response. "It's just a look for now," I answered, but added in a serious tone, "You know it will kill me if you ever decide to play. I don't think I can survive this. I know our marriage won't survive." She looked shocked for a moment, but managed to smile. "You know, I've always been faithful to you, Jim, and that will never change." "I know, but you're a beautiful woman, and I know you get hit on from time to time, and I know stay-at-home moms get bored." She was a little pale now, but she hugged me just as Carla beeped her horn to announce her arrival. She quickly kissed me on the lips and turned away. I thought I saw tears in her eyes as I picked up her bags and followed her to Carla's car. A few minutes later, I watched the car drive down the street and we waved goodbye to each other, perhaps for the last time. After feeding the kids, I called Bob and said I'd be there in a minute. He confirmed he would be there, so I gathered the kids and drove a few blocks to his house, taking a copy of Ian's emails with me. Bob was just finishing feeding Melissa when I arrived and gave me a big greeting as I walked in with Ryan and Sean. "Hi, guys," he greeted us. "Come into the living room and we'll watch a video of the kids." "I'm not going to stay long, Bob. We need to talk. Let the children go to the common room to play." He looked at me questioningly and shooed the children into the common room. "What is there and what do you have there?" he asked, pointing to the stack of letters I was holding in my hand. "This is for you to read," I told him as we sat down at the kitchen table. "But first I want to tell you something very bad, so try to stay calm." "What's the matter? Are you lethal or something?" "No, I would like to, but it could be detrimental to our marriages." Bob suddenly turned pale and silent when I told him about a conversation I had overheard between our wives a few days ago, and then let him read the emails. "Oh my God," he continued to say, reading emails that confirmed what I was telling him. I knew how devastating it was for him because I knew he loved Carla as much as I loved Janice. Having finished reading, he laid his head on the table and began to cry. After that, I told him about Sam and the Chicago investigator, what I had already done about our finances, and that I was going to the city clinic to take samples from myself and the children to determine my paternity. In their DNA, I asked if he wanted to come with me. He was shocked. The thought that Melissa might not be his daughter had not occurred to him until that moment. He suddenly jumped up and ran to the toilet, and I heard him bring his lunch and dry vomiting followed. Same reaction as my reaction a few days ago, but my reaction was flu-related, so I wasn't sure what caused my reaction. Now I know. Having calmed down, he said that he would come with us. He didn't look good as we gathered the kids and put them in the car for the drive to the clinic. They were very professional there, and all they had to do was use swabs to collect the saliva from each of us. I asked them to also do a blood test on me and my children to record our blood types. They told us they would fax us the results by next Wednesday. After leaving the clinic, we went to Bob's bank and he made the necessary changes to his accounts. He decided that he would contact his broker and insurance agent from his home phone. On the way back, I asked if he wanted to come to our house for the weekend. I told him I didn't think he should be alone. He thought for a moment and said, "Okay," but asked to come to his house to buy some things for the weekend. After that, we went back to our house. The kids were oblivious to what we were going through, and I was grateful. Their lives will soon be disrupted, and we must try to keep them in the dark for as long as possible. Bob and I were sitting in the kitchen talking about what we were going to do about 4 years of betrayal by our wife. We decided that we would lay low after their return and wait for the investigator's report and DNA test results before planning our next move. I knew that in order to remove any suspicions, we would have to have sex with our wives, but I didn't know if I could respond to Janice and get aroused. Bob noted that he might have the same problem, but he said that he had some samples of Viagra at home that his doctor gave him for a problem he had a few months ago that should help. I told him I'd pick up a couple when I took him and Melissa home on Sunday. We spent a quiet weekend together. Ian and Carla called every evening, and we were glad to hear from them. They were happy for Bob, me, and the kids to spend the weekend together. Ian said, "It would be great to plan this for next year, too." I thought, yeah, like it will be next year. On Sunday afternoon, before they got home, I drove Bob and Melissa home, took a few doses of Viagra, and then returned home to wait for Jen. Around 4 p.m., I heard the horn outside and went out to help Jen with her luggage. She was all smiles and seemed genuinely happy to see me. I thought, what the hell, if she can act happy, I can act happy too and react the same way to her actions. The kids were happy to see their mom, and she spent quite a bit of time with them while I carried her bags into our bedroom and emptied them. That evening, the whole family went out to dinner. Later, after the kids had gone to bed, she came up to me in the living room and took my hand, leading me to our bedroom. "Why don't you take off your clothes?" she asked me with a sexy smile, turned and went to the bathroom. This was the moment. Should I take Viagra? Rather than risk it, I slipped down the hall to another upstairs bath and took a dose. After a few moments, I felt horny and hurried back to the bedroom and undressed. I lay down on the bed when she came out of the bathroom. I was surprised. She was wearing a black short nightgown that I had never seen before. He went down and just covered the cheeks of her ass. There were signs that she wasn't wearing panties underneath, and I wondered if I needed Viagra. She saw me lying naked on the bed and asked, "Good to see me, Jim." "I bet, honey. It seems like we've been waiting for this forever." We had sex. Then I turned over and tried to sleep, but my thoughts wouldn't let me. Am I going crazy tolerating her indifference to my needs? I began to plan retribution if I received evidence from the investigator, as I hoped. The next morning, Sam called me from work and confirmed that the investigator had obtained video and photographs of Janice with Randy and Carla with Mark. He'll finish his report and send it to Sam's office, along with copies of the footage, by Wednesday. It looked like Wednesday would be a big day. I felt sick again, and this time it wasn't the flu. He then told me that he wanted to meet with Bob and I to discuss our plans. I told him I would call Bob and get back to him. I called Bob at work and told him what Sam had told me about the investigator's report and his request for a meeting. I heard Bob cry, and it took a while to pull myself together. Finally, we decided that we would get the DNA test results back on Wednesday so we could meet Sam on Thursday morning. I called Sam back and made an appointment with him on Thursday and at 9 a.m. Ian didn't offer sex again for a week, and I didn't want to push the issue. On Thursday morning, Bob and I met in Sam's office, and it turned out that he was ready to do a video presentation because he had a TV in the alcove next to his desk. We didn't say anything after we shook hands, and he motioned us to chairs in front of the TV, explaining that he would be showing it on mute, unless we wanted to listen. We both said we'd watch the first screening without sound. Without further discussion, he turned on the TV and played a video. The camera must have been mounted high above the bed as we looked down at it, and suddenly saw a naked man I didn't recognize climb onto the bed and lie on his back. The clarity of the image indicated that the camera must have been very expensive. A few moments later, a woman in a black short nightgown appeared and climbed onto the bed on top of the man. I immediately recognized her as Jan. She started delivering pleasurement. I immediately felt sick and ran to Sam's bathroom to get myself some breakfast. I noticed it was the same negligee she wore to our sex session on Sunday night. Sam stopped the recording and resumed it after I returned. After that, they moved on to Ian's breathless voice could be heard saying, "I'm really glad we can do this once a year, Randy. If I couldn't let my hair down at least once, I would go crazy at home. I love my husband, but I don't think he would respect me if I did what I do to you." "I feel the same way, Ian," Randy breathed back. "I thought you should hear this," Sam said, turning the sound off again. We continued to watch as they experienced several more pleasures, and then Sam put in another recording, and we saw Carla and her boyfriend go through much the same scenario. When it was finished, Sam turned off the TV and turned to us. "What is your pleasure, gentlemen? Do you want to proceed with the divorce?" "Sam, we've discussed this, and we want you to prepare the documents, but not hand them over until we tell you. We also want to get Randy and Mark's full names and addresses. We want to send their wives copies of the report and video." "Okay, I'll do the paperwork today." The investigator included names and addresses, as well as the names of your wife's lovers, in his written report. "I will give you copies before you leave, as well as a copy of the videotape. Do what you want. What about the paternity of your children?" On the way, we stopped at a clinic and took a DNA report. "I have another copy for you. Sean is not my son, I'm sorry to say, but I would like to find a way to adopt him." "You will need your father's permission to do this." "I understand that, but is there any leverage we can get him to give up his parental rights to Sean? I was thinking of filing a lawsuit against my wife's lover to recover alimony for 3 years from the date of his birth. If he signed permission to adopt me, he would not be responsible for future child support." "That would work, and you both could sue them for alienation of affection and use it as a negotiating tool. I think we would like to continue to look at these options." "Have you discussed this with your wives yet?" Sam asked. "No, we thought we'd do it tonight. We're getting together for dinner." "Okay, here are copies of the report and video. I will continue this question as you ordered. I'm very sorry this happened." After leaving Sam's office, we headed to the AV store and fired up more copies of the video. While I was there, I picked up a recorder that I planned to install over the weekend. We then went to Kinko's to view additional copies of the report. We bought large mailing envelopes, addressed them to Randy and Mark's wives, and then overnight express mailed them to their home in Milwaukee. Included in each envelope was a short handwritten note explaining who we were and how to contact us or Sam if needed. Back at the office, I explained to my boss that I was going to take a few days off, starting the next day to take care of some things at home. My work was up to date, and my staff knew where to find me while I was away, so he had no problem with my request. I spent the rest of the day at work calling the credit card companies, canceling our joint cards and opening one in just my name. Then I turned off Ian's cell phone. While checking Jonna's AOL email account from my office computer, I found one email from Randy sent on Monday morning saying she was home safely and looking forward to next year. There was no response from Randy. I spent the rest of the day downloading parts of the video and photos from the report onto my computer and then creating a website for it. I have added additional information about times, dates, etc., as well as a copy of the report on my DNA test and the children's DNA tests. Once finished, I stored the results in a secure file and left for the day. When I got home, Bob, Carla, and Melissa were already there, and after making everyone's drinks, Bob and I went into the living room, leaving the wives in the kitchen to prepare dinner. "Are you ready?" asked Bob. "I just need to load one of the videos into the player so we can be ready after dinner." I stood up, took a copy of the video out of my briefcase, and loaded it into the DVD player. Then I came back, sat down, and raised my glass to Bob. He returned the greeting. After a friendly family dinner, we headed into the living room, sending the kids into the bedroom to watch SpongeBob SquarePants, one of their favorites. Then I announced that I had a video that I wanted to show everyone, and the wives looked at me expectantly, but puzzled. "It's not something dirty, is it?" Young asked. "You promised me you wouldn't bring any X-rated things into this house." "Honey, these are family things. It's educational and shows how a family can be destroyed." She just nodded skeptically when I started the video. The first fragment of a bed in the center of the room came into view, followed by a photo of a naked Randy lying on the bed. Yang didn't recognize who the man was when she burst out. "You told me it wasn't X-rated." "I told you it was educational." And then Yang appeared on the screen. "Oh my God, she screamed. "How did you get it?" She turned pale as a paste while we watched. Jan and Carla cried and wailed. "Turn off! Turn off! I do not want to watch." Carla was crying. "Don't worry, Carla, you're a bitch." Bob yelled at his wife. "We have a video of you too." Now they were both in shock, crying and sobbing. The kids came running to find out what was going on, but we shooed them back into the bedroom before they noticed anything. Finally, Ian managed to gasp. "Please turn it off. Jim, please, we need to talk." I mercifully turned it off, leaving them sobbing and covering their tear-stained faces in shame. "Tell us about it, girls. Tell us why you wanted to betray us like that. We trusted you, and that trust is gone now. How do you plan to win our trust again? You broke your wedding vows, and how will you make up for it?" "I don't want to hear any. I'm sorry, or I can explain any bullshit because nothing you can say will take away the pain you've caused us. We just want to know how you plan to win our trust again. Or our marriages have broken down and we will get divorced. With the help of these videos, we will get custody of the children, and you will receive minimal financial satisfaction from us. So, if you think your marriage is worth saving, tell us how you plan to make it happen." "I don't know. I don't know," Yang cried, looking at me pleadingly. "You are my love. I thought it was just an innocent fling once a year. No one would get hurt." "I'm your love, aren't I? Would someone professing love for her husband intentionally go out and get pregnant by another man? Tell me this, my love." "Oh God, Ian screamed and fell back into screaming and sobbing. Carla was still crying, but looked at her sister with compassion. "Bob, I suggest you take Carla and Melissa home and come up with your own plan to save the marriage. Ian and I have a lot more things to deal with than you." Ian was left lying on the sofa in a fetal position, crying and sobbing in deep grief as I walked Bob and his family to the door. Carla turned her tear-stained face away from me, makeup and mascara running down her face, and walked away. I didn't even recognize her when I gave Bob a brotherly hug goodbye. I walked back into the living room and chased the kids back to the bedroom. They became worried that something was seriously wrong with our family and decided to take them to my parents for the night. When I told them, they really wanted to go. Their grandparents always spoiled them, and they loved it. Spending the night would be a special treat. I returned to the living room and said to Ian, "I'm taking the kids to my parents for the night. I'll be back in about half an hour, so you have time to decide what you're going to do." due to atone for your infidelity, or do you think this marriage and access to the children is worth it? The only reason, and I repeat, the only reason I would consider letting you stay is because of the kids. I won't say no. Sean, as far as I'm concerned, is my son. They both need a mother, and you are still the best candidate for the job. If you decide you want a divorce, I will make a video, DNA test results, etc. Investigators are reporting to the public, including your parents, siblings, and members of our church. You will no longer have a life in this community. Think about it. She didn't recognize me, but continued to sob even louder. I wrapped the children in pajamas and toothbrushes and went to my parents. They lived about 15 minutes away and were surprised to see us. But I explained that Ian and I wanted some privacy. My father winked at me and said, "We understand, son. Keep it as long as you want. You don't look very good, though." "I'll be fine, Dad." I returned home and the house was quiet. Ian wasn't in the living room, so I headed to our bedroom. I found her there, gathering her personal belongings and moving them to the guest room. I just looked at her and said, "Well?" She looked as if death had set in and continued to sob, trying to breathe out. "This marriage, you and my children are more important to me than anything in this world. I'm not going to apologize for what I did, and I'm not going to try to explain it away because you asked me not to. Why I allowed myself to become pregnant from him, I cannot even explain to myself. I'll stay if you let me. I understand that I will have to leave our marital bed until you see fit to bring me back. I will not deprive you of my body. You can have me any time. I know you can get back at me by sleeping with someone else, and I won't be able to stop you. It will hurt me just as much as I hurt you. I will do whatever you want, agree to whatever terms you want, to be able to stay here with you and the children. I understand that if I decided to get a divorce, this would be the end. I thank you for giving me at least some chance." Atone. That was a great speech, Ian. You may not yet realize what conditions I would require to allow you to stay here, and you may eventually want to leave. But I want revenge so badly that I can taste it. Since I found just 10 days ago, I have lived in agony, but your torment may take years. I hope you have taken this into account. I have it, Jim. Tomorrow I will tell you my terms. I told her, and they turned and walked back downstairs. Later, alone in bed, I heard her sobbing most of the night in the guest room. I wanted to go and console her, but the thought of what she had done made me so furious that I could not bring myself to go to her. She will have to make her own atonement. The next morning I got up early, showered and dressed casually. It was Saturday, and today we were going to meet with the whole family. But I wanted to sit down and write in black and white the terms of our new marriage contract so that I could get Yana's consent when she got up. I sat in the kitchen for almost an hour and wrote, crossing out and finally arriving at the final draft. I waited until 10 o'clock and then got up and woke Yana. "When you've cleaned up," I told her, "please join me downstairs in the kitchen." She looked at me and nodded, and I left her. Soon after, I heard the shower running, and within half an hour, she was sitting with me at the kitchen table. I started by saying, "I want you to know that I have given this serious thought and tried not to let my desire for revenge get the better of me and do something I will regret. I don't know if I still love you, but honestly, I hope you do. I will stay on this course to find out whether I miss my wife or not." She looked at me with a faint smile, and I gave a sign of hope. "Oh, Jim, I so want to be your wife again and leave all of this behind me, but I know I have a lot of catching up to do." "Yes, it is, and here's what you'll have to do to compensate for it." Then I started reading from my list of conditions. 1. You will never speak to another man alone again. I want this to mean you won't even be alone with the pizza guy or the counter. 2. There will be no more traveling alone anywhere. I don't care if your mother is dying and you want to get to her. If I can't go with you or someone I trust to go with you, you don't go. 3. You will tell me whenever you leave home where you are going, how long you will be staying, the purpose of the trip, and let me know when you return home. 4. You won't have any credit cards or a cell phone. I've already canceled them anyway. 5. You will be available for sex, not love, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nothing will be held back. You can do this for me. Do you understand this? Yes, I understand. I always wanted to do this with you, but I was afraid of losing your respect. Well, now I've definitely lost all respect for you. Was it worth it? No, no, she was crying. What you did to me requires me to include this condition. 6. You will always treat me with respect. You will be a happy, obedient wife and mother. 7. You will inform me every time you talk or communicate with a man, even if it is over the phone, chat, or email. I will have ways to test this, so you better be truthful and honest with me. 8. You will sign adoption papers allowing me to adopt Sean. 9. You will limit your interactions with Carla, in person or through other means, to 1 hour per week. I don't know who influenced whom in your affair, but I expect it was you. Bob, agree that we should keep you 2 separate. 10. You will be given a clothing allowance, but I will approve any new clothes that are provided. You will buy it. I won't let you spend the money I work for on buying sexy clothes for your lover. This is another sore point of mine, and that's all. Do you have any comments or reservations about these terms? The penalty for violating any of these conditions will be proportionate to the violation. No, I accept them unconditionally. They are more lenient than I would give you if our positions were reversed. Thank you. You know you're going to have to get Sean's own father to sign up too. I know this, and we are working to get this signature. You must understand that your lover and Carla's lover will not be able to escape punishment for this. Copies of the investigator's report and video CD were sent to their wives. In addition, we will send them to their wives. Sue them for alienation of affection, and your friend will be sued for child support and future alimony if he doesn't agree to the adoption. I think he'll sign the papers and agree to never try to see or contact Sean until it happens. His 21st birthday. Oh my God, you will destroy him. You should have thought about the future consequences when you got involved with him and had a child with him. She closed her eyes. It was so easy. We didn't think we'd get caught. But you did. I had a bad night dream about Jan and Randy. They seemed to laugh at me while we're engaged sex. I woke up furious, my shirt wet from the sweat pouring off me. I must have made a fuss because Ian came running and asked, "Are you okay?" I was still in a fit of rage when I rudely replied, "Yes, I'm fine. Leave me alone." "I'm sorry," she said as she left the room and walked away. The next morning I got up, showered, and then got dressed for early church service. Knocking on Ian's door, I said, "We're leaving for church in an hour." Then I went and started preparing the children. We were all ready to arrive on time and return to our normal schedule. After church, we went to IHOP for breakfast as usual. We then went home to have a lazy afternoon. I watched football matches, Jan did a crossword puzzle, and the children played with their toys. The only thing that wasn't normal was when I went out into the garage during a break and set up a tape recorder. From now on, I will be able to keep an eye on Ian when I am not at home. Another unusual thing was the phone call I received that day from Randy's wife. "Jim, I want to thank you for the package you sent me. It was very educational, and I'm going to use it in my divorce case against my husband." "Is betrayal a sufficient reason this year?" I asked. "This happens more than once a year. He played for years. Now I have the evidence to leave him and make him pay. Thank you. Can you do anything for me in return?" "Of course, name it." "I would like to obtain a DNA sample from your husband for DNA testing. I have a problem with paternity. Anything you send must be identified or certified as coming from your husband." "Consider it done. Give me a couple of days." "Thank you very much." "Thank you. You know that my husband's friend, Mark, is also going to divorce court, right? He played just like my husband." "No, I didn't hear that." Thanks for the info. Then we signed. I went in search of Yana and found her in the living room with the children. She looked at me questioningly. She knew she shouldn't ask who called, but I decided to enlighten her and cause her more pain because of her lover. It was Randy's wife. She is divorcing him. Mark's wife is also divorcing him. She turned a little pale and lowered her head. It seems, I continued, they were real libertines, and the materials I sent them gave their wives the evidence they needed to leave them. It will be very expensive for them. They will work for the rest of their lives to pay for their indiscretion and their lawyers. Given my paternity suit against him, Randy is really in dark brown. Ian suddenly jumped up and ran out of the room, sobbing. Later, she came back and told me, "I'm sorry I was in such a hurry. I just suddenly felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of ending 2 other marriages and possibly a third. It wasn't because I had any feelings for him. I just watched it. I didn't think anything more needed to be said." Thus began our period of redemption. To more closely monitor Ian's movements and communications, I bought a voice recorder that recorded voice signals from tiny transmitters that could be easily hidden. I hid the recorder in the garage next to the telephone recorder and 3 transmitters throughout the house where visitors could activate them. It wasn't 100% illuminated, but I thought it was enough to keep an eye on her. Our days just dragged on, and I could tell the pressure she was under to conform to my terms was taking its toll on her. Every day she looked more and more haggard and haggard. It must have been hard for me too, because my boss and secretary wanted me to go to the doctor. They told me that they thought the flu I had lasted too long and decided that I should be tested for walking pneumonia. I knew what the problem was: disease of the mind. Our personal life was devoted exclusively to sex. There was no love in it. She responded to my aggressive need to just fuck her, sometimes with the intent to hurt, without complaint. I continued to check my recording devices every evening when I returned home from work, but it was obvious that she was not communicating with anyone that she would not normally communicate with. She honestly called me every time she had to leave the house and informed me, as required by my conditions. But it bothered me that she had to be so tightly constrained. I didn't realize how restrictive they were and how loveless our marriage was. Now I've seen that we need a change. By the end of the first 30 days, we were both so stressed that we found it difficult to live together. Even the children noticed the tension, and it affected them. They were unnaturally quiet and nervous. They looked at us with concern on their faces. They felt like their world was about to explode and were worried. Watching them and Ian, I was torn. My conditioning and need for revenge was destroying the marriage and family I was trying to save. Finally, on Sunday afternoon, when the children were playing in the yard, I took Yana by the hand and led her into the living room. "We need to talk." She looked worried as I pushed her onto the couch next to me. I turned to her, gently took her face in my hands, and kissed her softly on the lips. When I pulled my lips away from hers, I said, "I love you." She looked at me impassively for a moment, and then broke down and began to cry. I took her in my arms and let her cry for quite a long time. There was no rush in this matter. I looked at the rest of our lives. If we didn't do it here, we wouldn't do it at all. Finally, she stopped crying, pulled away from me, and looked into my face. "It's really you, isn't it? Do you really love me? I can't stand this unless you're honest with me." "I love you, Ian. I can't keep going on like this. I watch you die a little every day, and suddenly I realize that I cannot live without you. It hurts the children too." A lot of thoughts over the last few days to try and evaluate my feelings for you. For a long time, I felt so empty that I no longer thought I loved you. I just wanted to keep living for you. Children, but it's becoming obvious that we're headed for a split if I can't forgive you and get over your affair, and especially the fact that Sean is not my son. I want you to know that I may never be able to forget what you did, but I can try to forgive you. When I made the decision to forgive you, I suddenly felt better, and the reason was my love for you. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. Oh, Jim, I never thought I would ever hear those words from your lips again. I think I understand your reasoning, and I know it was difficult for you to make the decision. You will never regret this. My dear, I love you so much. I wanted you to come back with me so many nights. Well, after we put the kids to bed tonight, I want to make slow, passionate love to you all night long. Her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen for a long time. She then took my face with both hands and brought her lips close to mine. Wow, I told her. Cannot wait. The kids suddenly came inside, and we had to break our emotional embrace. We looked into each other's eyes and parted. I saw nothing there but love and promise. We realized that the children were standing and looking at us. When they saw us smiling at each other, they suddenly began to climb over us, giggling and laughing. We became a family again. In the weeks that followed, our nights were filled with passionate lovemaking. There were no inhibitions when we explored our sexual fantasies. I discovered that Ian was insatiable, and I also wanted to satisfy his needs. Our happy family activities grew in proportion to our newfound love. The conditions that I imposed on her were quickly forgotten. I regained my trust and respect for her. But sometimes late at night, I would wake up screaming with memories of that time. Ian knew what caused nightmares, and he held me and gently kissed my fears and memories until I fell asleep again. Wherever she went alone, she made sure I knew where she was and what she was doing. She knew that my fragile body did not tolerate any doubts about her fidelity. I eventually came to an agreement with Randy regarding child support and used the money to create an education fund for our sons. He was more than happy to sign the adoption papers and lose the responsibility of further support. We settled the alienation claims and received enough funds to pay Sam and the investigator. Bob and Carla stayed together, and eventually we regained our old friendships. We experienced many happy moments together again. Our wives never mentioned going out together again. Our guarantee of their continued fidelity lies in safes registered in my name and Bob's name only. Copies of the video and report are safely tucked away there pending possible future action. I still keep the website on my work computer, and opening it is just a click of a button. Our wives have never asked for evidence of their infidelity, but I think they know it still exists.